The distress signal came through every communication channel in the Galactic Council chambers at once, a desperate cry that made the assembled representatives freeze in their seats. The Varani homeworld was under attack, and the message carried the unmistakable sound of fear. Ambassador Lauren Stevens stood in the human section of the vast circular chamber, her hands gripping the railing as she listened to the transmission. The Varani were peaceful scholars who had spent centuries helping other species develop medicine and education. Now their world burned under Krell bombardment, and their shields were failing. "We request immediate military assistance." The Varani diplomat's voice crackled through the speakers. "The Krell Dominion has surrounded our homeworld with 300 warships our defenses cannot hold. Please, we have 6 billion civilians trapped on the surface." The transmission cut off with a burst of static. Lauren looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on every alien face, pity mixed with helplessness. The Council had watched the Krell Dominion conquer 12 systems in 3 months and done nothing to stop them. Fear had paralyzed the galaxy's leadership. The Thalari representative spoke first, his voice careful and measured. "The Varani situation is tragic, but we must consider the practical realities. The Krell possess overwhelming military superiority. Any species that intervenes will become their next target. We should negotiate," another delegate suggested. "Perhaps offer the Krell something in exchange for sparing the Varani population." Lauren felt rage building in her chest but kept her voice steady. "The Varani are asking for help, and we're debating whether it's convenient to save them?" "You must understand, human," the Thalori continued. "Your species is new to galactic politics. You don't comprehend the scale of Krell military power. They have crushed empires that existed for thousands of years. Then maybe those empires didn't fight hard enough?" Lauren shot back. She pulled out her communication device and opened a priority channel to Earth. The connection took only seconds. Admiral Brandon Clark's face appeared on her screen. He was aboard the lunar station where Earth's Third Fleet maintained its headquarters. "Admiral, the Varani need us," Lauren said quickly. "The Krell are about to wipe them out." Clark's expression hardened. He was a man in his early 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes, a veteran of Earth's border conflicts, who had earned his reputation through impossible victories. "Send me everything you have on the situation." Lauren transmitted the data while the other council members continued their debate. The Thalori was now explaining why military intervention would be strategically inadvisable while the Varani homeworld died. Clark studied the tactical information for less than a minute before he spoke. 300 Krell ships against their homeworld defenses. "The Council says it's suicide to engage them," Lauren told him. "The Council can go to hell," Clark replied. 40 years ago, the Varani rescued the colony ship Exodus when it was stranded in deep space. They saved 5,000 human colonists, including 300 children. I was one of those children. Lauren felt her throat tighten. She had heard the story, but never knew Clark was personally involved. "The Varani shared their medical technology with us for free," Clark continued. "They asked for nothing in return, just that we remember their kindness." "Well, I remember. Earth Command will never authorize this," Lauren said, though she hoped she was wrong. "Earth Command already gave me standing orders regarding the Varani." Clark's smile was cold. "If they ever needed help, we go, no questions asked. The Third Fleet can be ready to jump in 6 hours." Lauren turned back to the council chamber, where the debate had devolved into circular arguments about jurisdiction and proper diplomatic channels. She cleared her throat and activated her own speaker. "The human fleet will respond to the Varani distress call," she announced. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate turned to stare at her with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief. "That's madness," the Thalori sputtered. "You'll be sending your people to their deaths. The Krell will annihilate any force you send. Then we'll die doing what's right," Lauren said, repeating the words Clark had just spoken to her. Your species has only been part of this council for 50 years, another delegate argued. You don't have the military experience to engage in conflicts of this scale. Your technology is decades behind Krell standards. Our technology got us from caves to starships in 10,000 years. Lauren replied, We'll make it work. The Thalori leaned forward in his seat. How many ships can Earth possibly send? 10? 20? Against 300 Krell warships? The Third Fleet has 47 combat vessels, Lauren said. That's what we're sending. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The mathematics were brutal, a 7-to-1 disadvantage against the most aggressive military force in known space. This is suicide, the Thalori said flatly. We will mourn your species passing, but we cannot support this foolish action. Lauren closed the communication link and left the chamber. There was nothing more to say to beings who would debate while innocents died. She made her way to the observation deck where she could see Earth's moon hanging in the void. 6 hours later, exactly as promised, the Third Fleet broke orbit. Lauren watched through the station's telescopes as 47 warships moved into formation. The fleet represented humanity's most powerful military force, every vessel crewed by volunteers. Who knew the odds and went anyway? The flagship was the EC's Defiance, a heavy cruiser bristling with weapons that other species considered primitive. Kinetic cannons, nuclear missiles, plasma batteries, all built with Earth's trademark. Disregard for elegance in favor of pure destructive power. Captain Nicole Harper stood on the Defiance's bridge and watched her crew prepare for the 3-week journey to Varani space. She was 32 years old and had lost her parents in a Krell raid on a Mayan colony. This mission was personal for her as it was for most of the fleet. All ships report ready for jump, Commander Cal Morrison announced from the tactical station. Admiral Clark sat in the command chair and looked at the faces of his bridge crew. They were young, determined, and about to face the fight of their lives. The galaxy expected them to die screaming in the void. Earth Command had given them a 73% casualty projection. Communications, send a final message to the Council, Clark ordered. The communications officer nodded and opened the channel. This is Admiral Brandon Clark, Averse Third Fleet to the Galactic Council. His voice carried across every frequency. You asked us to recognize impossible odds. You told us there's no shame in retreat. But humanity doesn't measure success by survival rates. We measure it by whether we showed up when someone needed us. He paused, and Nicole saw several crew members straightening in their seats. 40 years ago, the Varani saved human lives when they had no obligation to help us, Clark continued. They asked for nothing but our memory of their kindness. Today, we prove that humanity remembers. We're not going to Varani space to win. We're going because someone has to stand between predators and prey. Another pause. Longer this time. If we die, then we die keeping our word. If the Krell want the Varani, they'll have to go through us first. Earth's Third Fleet is en route. Arrival in 3 weeks. Clark out. The transmission ended and the bridge was silent. Nicole felt tears on her cheeks, but didn't bother wiping them away. Helm, take us to jump coordinates, Clark ordered. Let's go save some lives. The Defiance's engines flared bright blue and the massive ship leaped forward. Behind it, 46 more warships followed in perfect formation. The fleet accelerated toward the jump point, while the galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. On the Council station, Lauren stood at the observation window until the last human ship vanished into faster-than-light travel. The Thalari delegate approached and stood beside her. They're going to die, he said quietly. All of them. Maybe, Lauren replied. But they're going to make the Krell pay for every meter of space. Your species doesn't understand, the Thalori continued. The Krell have conquered hundreds of worlds. They know every tactic, every strategy. They've defeated enemies far more advanced than humanity. Lauren turned to face him, her expression hard. The Krell have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of when someone threatens people we care about. And what are humans capable of? They're about to find out, Lauren said. The journey to Varani space took 3 weeks, and during that time, the entire galaxy watched humanity's death march through every available sensor array. News networks from 100 species broadcast continuous coverage of the human fleet. Their analysts predicting total destruction within the first hour of combat. Aboard the ECS Defiance, Admiral Clark gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. Captain Nicole Harper sat across from him while Commander Kyle Morrison displayed tactical projections on the main screen. Lieutenant Derek Shaw, the weapons specialist, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Intelligence reports confirmed 300 Krell warships in orbit around the Varani homeworld, Morrison said. They're arranged in a standard siege formation, rotating bombardment patterns to wear down the planetary shields. How long do the Varani have? Clark asked. Best estimate, 5 days before their shields collapse completely, Morrison replied. After that, the Krell will begin surface bombardment. Nicole studied the tactical display and felt a cold weight in her stomach. 300 ships against their 47. The numbers were worse than she had imagined. What's their typical battle doctrine? The Krell prefer overwhelming firepower combined with standard formation tactics, Morrison explained. They rely on superior numbers and advanced shielding technology. Most species can't penetrate their defenses long enough to do significant damage. Most species aren't human, Derek interjected. We've been analyzing their ship designs for years. Their shields are strong, but their power distribution is predictable. If we hit them with enough concentrated fire in rapid succession, we can overload their defensive systems. Clark nodded slowly. We're not going to fight them the way they expect. The Krell have centuries of experience with galactic warfare, but galactic warfare follows rules, protocols. There's an understood code of conduct that every civilized species follows. We're not going to follow those rules? Nicole asked. We're going to fight the way humans have always fought, Clark said. Dirty, desperate, and without mercy for those who prey on the innocent. The briefing continued for another hour as they refined their battle plan. It was audacious to the point of insanity, a strategy that would horrify every military academy in known space. But it was also the only approach that gave them even a slim chance of survival. After the meeting, Nicole returned to her quarters and found a message waiting from Earth. It was from her younger brother, who still lived in New Seattle. She played the recording, and his face appeared on her screen. Hey, sis, he said with a forced smile. Everyone here is talking about the mission. They're saying you guys are heroes. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you. Mom and Dad would be too. Nicole felt her eyes burning. Their parents had died when the Krell raided the mining colony where they worked. She was 19 at the time, and her brother was only 12. I know you're doing this partly because of them, her brother continued. And I get it, I really do. But please come home. I can't lose you too. The message ended, and Nicole sat in the darkness of her quarters for a long time. She thought about the choices that had led her to this moment. The years of training. The raves that had driven her to join the fleet. The burning need to make someone pay for what happened to her family. But this mission wasn't about revenge. It was about something bigger. The Varani had never harmed anyone. They were teachers and healers who had helped humanity when no one else would. If humans couldn't stand up for people like that, then what did their principles mean? She recorded a reply to her brother, keeping her voice steady. I'm coming home, I promise, but first I have to do this. Someone has to show the galaxy that mercy and kindness aren't weaknesses to be exploited. The Varani helped us when we needed it. Now we help them. That's what family does. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Amy Chun prepared for the casualties that would inevitably come. She had converted every available space into treatment areas and stockpiled supplies far beyond normal requirements. Her staff worked around the clock, knowing that once the battle started, they would be overwhelmed. Amy was 41 years old and had served in the fleet for 15 years. She had seen combat before, but never on this scale. The casualty projections suggested they would lose over half the fleet. Thousands of lives extinguished in a matter of hours. One of her nurses, a young man named Peter, approached with a concerned expression. "Doctor, do you really think we can win this?" Amy looked at him and chose her words carefully. "I think we can make a difference. Whether that means winning or dying while doing the right thing, I guess we'll find out." "That's not very reassuring." "I'm not here to give false hope," Amy replied. "I'm here to save everyone I can. That's all any of us can do in the engineering section." Commander Greg Patterson pushed his team to extract every ounce of performance from the ship's systems. He had been making modifications for weeks, tweaking the reactor output, rerouting power conduits, finding ways to boost weapon efficiency by 5% here and 10% there. "Sir, if we push the reactors this hard, we're going to burn out the regulators," one of his technicians warned. "Then we fight until they burn out," Patterson said flatly. "This ship doesn't need to survive the battle. It just needs to last long enough to complete the mission." The technician looked uncomfortable, but nodded and returned to work. Patterson knew he was asking his crew to sacrifice their safety for marginal gains in combat effectiveness, but that was the reality of their situation. They couldn't win a conventional fight, so they had to make every advantage count. Admiral Clark made it a point to visit every section of the ship during the journey, talking to crew members, listening to their concerns, making sure they understood what they were fighting for. In the mess hall, he sat with a group of junior officers who were barely out of the academy. "Admiral," one of them asked, "is it true you were on the Exodus when the Varani rescued it?" Clark nodded. "I was 8 years old. The ship's life support was failing, and we were weeks away from the nearest inhabited system. The Varani picked up our distress call and diverted 3 of their research vessels to help us. They didn't have to. We were strangers, just another random species they had never met. Why did they help?" Another officer asked. "Because they could," Clark replied. "The Varani diplomat who coordinated the rescue told my mother something I never forgot. He said that civilization is measured by how species treat those who can't help them in return. The Varani saved us knowing we had nothing to offer them. They did it because it was right." The officers listened in silence. "That's why we're going to Varani space," Clark continued. "Not because Earth Command ordered it, not because we think we'll win. We're going because 40 years ago they showed us what real compassion looks like. Now we get to show them that humans remember." 1 week before they reached Varani space, the Krell sent a broadcast across every communication channel. It was meant as intimidation, a show of force designed to terrify any species considering intervention. The Krell commander appeared on screen, a massive creature with dark armor and burning red eyes. "This message is for the human fleet currently approaching Varani space." His voice was cold and mechanical. "You have been warned of the consequences of interference. The Varani homeworld belongs to the Krell Dominion. Any vessels that enter this system will be destroyed without mercy." The broadcast showed footage of Krell warships obliterating a small transport convoy, the explosions captured in horrific detail. "Your species is primitive and weak," the Krell commander continued. "You cannot comprehend the power you face. Turn back now or share the fate of all who oppose the Dominion." The transmission ended, and Clark ordered his communications officer to prepare a response. "Admiral, are you sure you want to answer?" the officer asked. "It might be better to maintain communication silence. I want them to know we're coming," Clark said. The channel opened, and Clark spoke directly to the Krell commander, his voice carrying across the void between fleets. This is Admiral Brandon Clark of Earth's Third Fleet. We received your message, and we have a response. The Varani are under human protection now. If you want them, you'll have to go through us." He paused for emphasis. "You think you understand warfare because you've conquered weaker species," Clark continued. "But you've never fought an enemy that had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Earth is a death world where every creature evolved fighting for survival. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. Now you get to see what happens when we stop fighting ourselves and focus on someone else." Nicole watched her admiral deliver the message and felt a fierce pride. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and probably going to die. But they would face it with their eyes open and their weapons hot. "We'll be there in 7 days," Clark concluded. "Use that time to reconsider your life choices." Earth's Third Fleet out. The bridge erupted in cheers, and Clark allowed himself a small smile. They were flying into certain doom, but at least they would do it on their own terms. The final days of the journey passed quickly. The crew trained relentlessly, running simulation after simulation until their responses became instinctive. Nicole Harper spent 18 hours a day at her station, memorizing every tactical scenario, preparing for every. The human fleet emerged from faster than light, traveled directly into the heart of the Krell Formation, a maneuver so reckless that it violated every principle of galactic warfare. Standard doctrine required maintaining safe distances and establishing communication protocols before engagement. Humanity ignored all of it. The EC's Defiance opened fire before the Krell could react, her weapons blazing across 3 enemy cruisers in the first salvo. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked through space while kinetic rounds punched through shields that weren't designed to handle such primitive brutality. Admiral Clark gripped his command chair as the ship shook from return fire. "All vessels, free engagement. Pick your targets and don't stop shooting until they're dead or we are." Captain Nicole Harper coordinated the point defense systems, her fingers flying across the tactical display as she marked priority targets. Krell battleship on our port side is charging weapons. Multiple lock warnings. Ram them, Clark ordered. The bridge crew froze for half a second before training took over. The Defiance's engines roared and the massive cruiser accelerated directly toward the Krell battleship. The enemy commander apparently couldn't believe what he was seeing because his shields weren't properly aligned when the two ships collided. The impact threw everyone forward against their restraints. Metal screamed and hull plates buckled, but the Defiance punched through the Krell shields and raked her weapons along the enemy ship's exposed flank at point-blank range. Explosions rippled across the battleship's surface as the human cruiser tore away, trailing debris but still functional. "Damage report," Clark barked. "Hull breach on deck 7. Casualties reported in sections 9 through 12. Commander Kyle Morrison called out. "Shields at 40% and regenerating. Good enough. Find me another target." Across the battlefield, 46 other human ships engaged in similar acts of controlled insanity. The destroyer ECS Ranger identified a cluster of Krell frigates and simply detonated her reactor in the middle of their formation. The explosion consumed 5 enemy ships and crippled 3 more. Lieutenant Derek Shaw watched his tactical display and felt a savage satisfaction as the human battle plan unfolded. "Admiral, the Krell are breaking formation. They're trying to establish distance. Don't let them," Clark ordered. "All ships, close to knife fighting range. Don't give them room to use their superior weapons." The human fleet pressed forward, ignoring damage, ignoring casualties, focusing solely on destroying as many Krell ships as possible. It was warfare stripped to its most primal form. No elegance, no strategy beyond kill or be killed. On the Krell flagship, Commander Vorath watched his tactical display with growing disbelief. His fleet had crushed dozens of species using these same formations and tactics. The humans should have been annihilated in the first exchange. Instead, they were tearing through his ships like predators among prey. "How many vessels have we lost?" he demanded. 74 destroyed, 32 heavily damaged, his tactical officer reported. "The humans are fighting without regard for their own survival. They're using suicide tactics." Vorath had studied every major conflict in galactic history. He understood warfare as an art form, a careful balance of force projection and resource management. What the humans were doing wasn't warfare, it was butchery. "Target their command ship," he ordered. "Concentrate all fire on the vessel designated Defiance." 50 Krell warships turned their weapons toward Clark's flagship. The space around the Defiance lit up with incoming fire, plasma beams, and particle weapons, creating a deadly web of energy. "Brace for impact," Nicole shouted. The Defiance's shields held for exactly 4 seconds before they collapsed under the overwhelming firepower. Enemy weapons tore into the hull, ripping through armor and cutting deep into the ship's structure. Explosions bloomed across multiple decks as power conduits overloaded and ammunition stores ignited. Clark felt the ship dying around him, but his voice remained steady. "All power to weapons. If we're going down, then we're taking them with us." "Morrison, target that Krell carrier. The big one at coordinates 7-7-9. "Sir, we don't have enough power left to—" "I said all power," Clark interrupted. "Life support, artificial gravity, navigation. Everything goes to weapons right now." The engineering section complied, and the Defiance's main cannon charged for one final shot. The beam that erupted from the ship's spine was brighter than a star, a concentrated lance of energy that punched clean through the Krell carrier's shields and detonated its reactor. The carrier exploded in a fireball that consumed 6 nearby ships, a devastating blow to the Krell formation. "Sir, multiple system failures. We're venting atmosphere on 12 decks," Morrison reported. Before Clark could respond, the destroyer, ECS Valor, positioned itself between the Defiance and the remaining Krell attackers. "Defiance, this is Captain Ross of the Valar. We'll buy you time to get your shields back online. Negative, Valor. Fall back to—" "Sorry, Admiral. Can't hear you. Our communications must be damaged," Ross replied, and Nicole heard the smile in his voice. The Valor absorbed the enemy fire meant for the flagship, her shields flaring and failing as she covered the Defiance's retreat. When her weapons finally went silent, she drifted in space, a broken shell that had once been home to 300 crew members. "Valor is destroyed," Nicole reported quietly. Clark's expression was carved from stone. "Their sacrifice will be remembered. Helm, get us back in the fight." Down in the medical bay, Dr. Amy Chun worked in conditions that would have been impossible in any other situation. The gravity was failing, the lights flickered constantly, and there were holes in the hull that exposed sections to vacuum. Still, she moved from patient to patient, doing everything she could to keep people alive. "Doctor, we've got another group coming in from engineering," her nurse Peter called out. Amy looked at the dozen wounded crew members being carried through the door and made rapid assessments. 3 were already dead. 4 had injuries that required immediate surgery. The rest could wait. "Get those 4 on tables now," she ordered. "Everyone else, if you can still hold a bandage, you're helping." One of the wounded, a young woman with burns across half her face, tried to sit up. "Doctor, I need to get back to my station." "You need to stay still before you pass out," Amy replied, gently pushing her back down. "My team needs me. Your team needs you alive," Amy said. "Let me do my job so you can do yours later." The battle raged for 3 hours, a brutal exchange that left both fleets savaged. The human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked even themselves, pressing attacks when any sane commander would have retreated, accepting casualties that other species would consider catastrophic. Derek Shaw coordinated weapons fire from his station, his display showing a battlefield that resembled a scrapyard more than a combat zone. "We've lost the X-Thunder," the Phoenix and the Mercury. How many Krell ships destroyed? Clark asked. 147 confirmed kills. Another 50 damaged badly enough to be combat ineffective. The Krell fleet began to withdraw, not in an organized retreat, but in a panicked flight. Their commanders had never faced an enemy willing to trade ship for ship, life for life, with no concern for survival. The humans fought like the universe itself had wronged them, and they were determined to burn everything down in response. Admiral Clark opened a channel across all frequencies, broadcasting to both fleets and the watching galaxy beyond. Krell vessels, this is your final warning. Leave Virani space now, or we will destroy every single one of your ships on the Krell flagship. Morath stared at the tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. His fleet had been reduced to fewer than 100 combat-effective vessels. The humans still had 21 ships operational, battered and bleeding but still fighting. Commander, the human vessels are pursuing, his tactical officer said. Vorath made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships retreat to the jump point. We'll regroup and return with reinforcements. The Krell fleet broke off and accelerated away from the planet. The human ships pursued for several thousand kilometers before Clark called them back. All vessels, stand down and begin damage assessment, he ordered. The Defiance's bridge fell silent except for the sound of damaged systems and labored breathing. Nicole looked at the casualty reports streaming across her display and felt her hands shaking. They had lost 26 ships, over 12,000 crew members dead or missing. But the Virani were safe, at least for now. Sir, incoming transmission from the planet, the communications officer said. The main screen flickered and showed a Virani female with tear-streaked face. Human vessels, this is Prime Minister Alora Ven of the Virani homeworld. We don't have words to express our gratitude. You saved us. Clark stood despite his injuries, blood seeping through his uniform from a dozen wounds. Prime Minister, we kept our promise. The Virani helped humanity when we needed it. Now we've returned the favor. The Krell will return, Alora said. Our sensors detect their reinforcements are only 3 days away. You must leave before they arrive. We're not leaving, Clark replied. But you'll be destroyed. Then we'll be destroyed protecting you, Clark said. That's what friends do. The transmission ended and Nicole approached her admiral. Sir, we barely survived this battle. The Virani homeworld opened its arms to the battered human fleet with gratitude that brought tears to hardened soldiers. Orbital stations that had been research facilities became emergency repair docks, while Virani engineers worked alongside human crews to patch hulls and restore systems. Admiral Clark stood in the Defiance's damaged bridge and studied the tactical projections. Intelligence confirmed that Krell reinforcements would arrive in 72 hours, 600 warships compared to their 21 operational vessels. The mathematics were brutal, but Clark had faced impossible odds before. We need a force multiplier, Commander Kyle Morrison said as he examined the star charts. Something that negates their numerical advantage. Captain Nicole Harper pointed to the Virani moon, a rocky satellite with minimal atmosphere. What if we turn that into a fortress? Use the moon as a fixed defensive position. Clark leaned forward, his tactical mind already running calculations. The Krell will have to approach through a narrow corridor if they want to reach the planet. We mine the approach vector, set up weapons platforms on the moon, turn it into a killing ground. We'd need every available resource from the Virani. Morrison noted. Then we ask them, Clark said. Within hours, Prime Minister Alora Ven stood in a hastily arranged meeting with Clark and his senior staff. The Virani leader looked exhausted. Her people had spent weeks under siege, and the relief of rescue was mixed with fear of what would come next. Admiral, our civilization will give you everything we have, Alora said. Raw materials, manufacturing capacity, our engineering knowledge, whatever you need to defend us. We'll need to strip mine parts of your moon, Clark explained. Turn it into a weapons platform. The environmental impact will be significant. Our moon or our lives, Alora replied. That's an easy choice. Take what you need. The next 72 hours became a frenzied race against time. Human and Varani crews worked around the clock, converting peaceful research equipment into instruments of war. Lieutenant Derek Shaw led teams that placed nuclear mines throughout the orbital approach, creating a gauntlet that any attacking force would have to navigate. Chief Engineer Katie Brennan directed the construction of weapons platforms on the moon's surface. She was a 35-year-old genius who could design functional systems out of spare parts and desperation. We're mounting every weapon we can salvage from the damaged ships, Katie explained to Clark during an inspection tour. The platforms won't survive concentrated fire, but they'll punch above their weight while they last. Clark watched Varani workers welding human plasma cannons onto improvised mounts. How many can we build in 3 days? 40 platforms with overlapping fields of fire, Katie said. Plus the orbital mines and whatever our remaining ships can contribute. It's not enough to stop 600 ships, but it'll make them pay. Down on the planet's surface, the Varani had opened their medical facilities to human wounded. Dr. Amy Chun supervised the transfer of critical patients while marveling at Varani medical technology. Their surgical techniques were decades ahead of Earth's. Precision instruments that could repair damage human doctors couldn't even attempt. A Varani physician named Tolar worked beside Amy to save a human engineer who had been caught in an explosion. Your species has remarkable durability, Tolar observed. This man should be dead from these injuries. Humans are hard to kill, Amy replied. We evolved on a planet that tried to destroy us every day. You either get tough or you die. I'm beginning to understand why your fleet fights so fiercely. We fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Amy said, the Varani saved human children 40 years ago. Now we save yours. That's how civilization should work, Lieutenant Ryan Brooks, one of the fleet's best fighter pilots, volunteered for a desperate mission. He would pilot a small craft loaded with sensor equipment deep into Krull-controlled space to gather intelligence on the incoming fleet. Clark met with him before the launch. This is a one-way trip. Even if you survive the reconnaissance, you won't make it back before the battle starts. Ryan was 26 years old with an easy smile that made him popular among the crew. I know the score, Admiral, but if I can get you accurate targeting data, it might make the difference between holding the line and getting slaughtered. Why volunteer for this? My mom was a teacher, Ryan said. She always told me that the measure of a person is what they do when no one's watching. Well, I'm going to go out there and do something that matters. Whether anyone sees it or not, Clark shook his hand. Godspeed, Lieutenant. Ryan's fighter launched 12 hours later, disappearing into the void on a mission that everyone knew he wouldn't return from. On the second day of preparation, Ambassador Lauren Stevens arrived from the Galactic Council on a fast courier ship. She brought news that made Clark's blood boil. The council held an emergency session, Lauren explained in the Defiance's conference room. They debated for 18 hours about sending help. And? Clark asked, though he already knew the answer. They're still debating, Lauren said bitterly. The Thalori keep arguing about proper diplomatic channels and whether intervention sets a dangerous precedent. Meanwhile, you're preparing to fight 600 ships with 21. Nicole Harper slammed her hand on the table. We're about to die protecting innocent people, and they're worried about precedents. Some species are arguing for helping, Lauren continued. The Varani have friends in the council. But the vote requires unanimous approval, and the Krull have allies who are blocking any action. Clark stood and walked to the viewport, staring at the beautiful world they were preparing to defend. We don't need the council's permission to do what's right. If they want to help, fine. If not, we fight anyway. There's something else, Lauren said quietly. The Krell commander sent a message. He's offering terms. The room fell silent. What kind of terms? Morrison asked. If humanity withdraws, the Krell will spare your fleet, Lauren explained. They'll even guarantee safe passage back to Earth. All you have to do is leave the Varani to their fate. Derek Shaw laughed. A harsh sound without humor. They think we came all this way just to abandon the people we're protecting. The Krell don't understand species that fight for principles instead of profit, Clark said. Send them my response. Tell them humanity doesn't negotiate with predators. On the morning of the third day, Ryan Brooks transmitted his final intelligence report. His fighter had been damaged by Krell scouts, but he had gotten close enough to scan the incoming fleet. Admiral, this is Brooks. His voice crackled through heavy interference. I've got your data. 617 ships. They're bringing everything. Battleships, carriers, the works. ETA is 6 hours. Lieutenant, get out of there, Clark ordered. Negative, sir. My fighter shot to pieces. But I can see their formation. If you concentrate fire on their command cluster, the ships designated Alpha through Epsilon, you can disrupt their coordination. Brooks, it's been an honor, Admiral. Ryan said, tell my mom I did something that mattered. The transmission ended. 20 minutes later, sensors detected a small explosion deep in Krell space. One fighter's defiant last stand against impossible odds. Clark stood before his crew in the Defiance's main hangar. Every available person crowded into the space to hear his final address before battle. In a few hours, the Krell will arrive with a fleet designed to crush us, Clark began. The smart play would be to run, save ourselves and live to fight another day. But humanity didn't come to Varani space to make smart plays. He paused, looking at faces both human and Varani. 40 years ago, the Varani proved that compassion isn't weakness. They saved human lives knowing we couldn't repay them. They showed us that civilization means protecting those who need help. Today, we return that lesson. The Krell think might makes right. They believe the strong can prey on the weak without consequence. We're here to teach them they're wrong. Every mine we've placed, every weapon we've mounted, every ship we've repaired. It's all a message to predators everywhere. Clark's voice rose with intensity. That message is simple. Touch the innocent and face the consequences. We are humanity. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us. We survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We conquered disease and famine. We built civilization from nothing but stubborn refusal to quit. The crew was silent, hanging on every word. Today, the Krell learn what it means to fight humans. Not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we remember our debts. We protect our friends, and we never, ever, surrender when someone needs us. He looked around the hangar. When this is over, when the historians write about what happened here, they won't remember the odds or the casualties. They'll remember that humanity showed up. That when the galaxy needed someone to stand between predators and prey, we were there. Clark raised his voice to a shout. Today we fight not for conquest or glory. We fight because the Varani helped us when we were weak. Because some things are worth dying for. Because we are human, and this is what we do. The hangar erupted in cheers. Crew members embracing and preparing for what might be their final hours. Nicole found Clark after the speech. Sir, that was inspiring. Do you really think we can hold them? No, Clark admitted. But we're going to try anyway, because that's what heroes do. 2 hours before the Krell arrived. The Krell Armada advanced in perfect formation. 617 warships, moving as one toward the Varani moon where humanity's last stand would unfold. Admiral Clark watched them come, his bridge crew silent with anticipation, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of billions. All weapons platforms report ready, Commander Kyle Morrison announced. Orbital mines are armed and awaiting detonation command, Lieutenant Derek Shaw added. Captain Nicole Harper studied the tactical display marking priority targets in the enemy formation. Sir, they're concentrating their heaviest ships in the vanguard. They plan to overwhelm our defenses through sheer firepower. Then we hit them before they get into optimal range. Clark ordered. All ships, target the command cluster Brooks identified. Fire on my mark. The human fleet waited, engines hot and weapons charged, as the Krell closed the distance. At 5,000 kilometers, exactly where the first orbital mines were positioned, Clark gave the order. Now, space erupted in nuclear fire as dozens of mines detonated simultaneously, creating a wall of explosive force that tore into the Krell vanguard. Enemy shields flared and failed under the onslaught. 5 battleships destroyed in the first seconds. 10 more heavily damaged. The Krell fleet scattered, their perfect formation breaking as commanders tried to navigate the minefield. That was exactly what Clark had planned. All ships, engage at will, he commanded. The X-Defiance led the charge, her weapons blazing as she targeted a Krell carrier struggling to reform its shields. Human destroyers darted between larger enemy vessels, firing at point-blank range before accelerating away. The weapons platforms on the moon's surface opened fire 40 installations, sending concentrated beams into the Krell formation. They wouldn't last long under return fire, but every second they survived inflicted casualties. On the Krell flagship, Commander Vorath watched his tactical display with growing fury. The humans had turned the approach vector into a death trap. His ships were taking damage before they could effectively return fire. All vessels, concentrate on those moon-based installations, he ordered. Destroy them immediately. 200. Krell ships turned their weapons toward the moon, and the bombardment was devastating. Weapons platforms exploded under the onslaught, their crews dying at their posts without flinching. Katie Brennan coordinated the defense from the last surviving platform, her voice steady even as explosions surrounded her position. Platform 7 is gone. Platform 12, 19, she reported to the Defiance. We've lost over half our installations, but we're still firing. Keep fighting, Chief, Clark replied. Every shot counts. The battle descended into chaos as human ships executed tactics that no sane commander would attempt. The destroyer Issa Lightning accelerated directly into the Krell formation and detonated her reactor in the middle of their command cluster, taking 6 enemy ships with her. Nicole coordinated defensive fire as enemy weapons hammered the Defiance's shields. Shield strength at 30%. We can't take much more. Then we make every shot count, Clark said. Morrison, target that battleship, the one marked Alpha 3. The Defiance's main cannon fired, and the Krell battleship exploded in a satisfying fireball. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Amy Chun worked in impossible conditions. The ship shook constantly from impacts. The lights flickered, and wounded crew members kept arriving faster than she could treat them. Doctor, we're running out of supplies, her nurse Peter warned. Then we improvise, Amy replied, her hands working to save a young officer who'd been caught in an explosion. Nobody dies because we gave up. The battle raged for an hour, then 2. The human fleet slowly being whittled down despite their desperate resistance. Ships fell one by one, their crews fighting until the very last moment before their vessels disintegrated. Derek Shaw watched his display and felt a cold certainty settling over him. They were losing. The mathematics were undeniable. At the current casualty rate, they had perhaps 30 minutes before the fleet was completely destroyed. Admiral, we're down to 7 operational ships, he reported quietly. Clark's face was carved from stone. Then we fight with 7, Morrison. How many Krell ships have we destroyed? 231 confirmed kills, Morrison replied. Another 50 damaged. Not bad, Clark said. But not enough. Nicole looked at her admiral and saw something in his expression. A decision being made, a final card being played. Sir, she began. Captain Harper, I want you to take command of the remaining destroyers. Clark interrupted. Form them into a defensive screen around the planet. What about the Defiance? The Defiance is going to buy you time, Clark said calmly. We're going after their flagship. The bridge fell silent. Admiral, that's suicide, Morrison protested. Their command ship is surrounded by 100 escorts, which is why we need to do it now, before they reform their formation, Clark replied. If we can kill their commander, the fleet might break. It's our only chance, Nicole understood immediately. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about creating an opportunity for something impossible to happen. It's been an honor serving with you, sir, she said. The honor was mine, Captain, Clark replied. Now get those destroyers in position. Protect the Varani, no matter what happens to us. Nicole saluted and transferred to the destroyer X Valor II, taking command of the last human ships. She watched on her screen as the Defiance broke formation and accelerated toward the heart of the Krell fleet. Aboard the Defiance, Clark addressed his crew one final time. I won't lie to you, we're not coming back from this. But if we succeed, if we can kill their commander, we give everyone else a chance. That's worth dying for. The crew responded not with fear, but with determination. They had known from the beginning that this mission might end in their deaths. Now they embraced it. The Defiance charged into the Krell formation, her weapons firing constantly as enemy ships tried to intercept. Morrison rerouted all power from non-essential systems, flooding the weapons with enough energy to punch through shields and armor. 60 seconds to the flagship, the helm officer announced. Enemy fire tore into the Defiance from all sides, explosions rippling across her hull as systems failed. The bridge filled with smoke and sparks, crew members dying at their stations. But still, the ship drove forward. 30 seconds, Clark gripped his command chair, blood running from a dozen wounds. Morrison, prepare to overload the reactor. Sir? If we can't shoot them to death, we'll blow them to pieces, Clark said. Set the reactor to critical. Give us everything she's got. Morrison's hands moved across his console, bypassing safety systems and initiating a cascade failure that would turn the Defiance into a massive bomb. Reactor critical in 60 seconds, he reported. The Defiance closed to point-blank range with the Krell flagship, so close that their shields were touching. Clark looked at the enemy command ship and smiled. This is for everyone you killed, he said, and gave the order to fire. The Defiance's weapons erupted at maximum power, pouring energy directly into the Krell flagship's shields. For 5 seconds, the two ships were locked together, human weapons against alien defenses, until the Krell shields collapsed. Then the Defiance's reactor went critical. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a new sun blooming in space, as the flagship and the Defiance disintegrated together. The shockwave consumed 15 nearby Krell ships and crippled 30 more. Commander Vorath died in that explosion, his final transmission a warning to the galaxy about humanity's madness. Nicole watched from the Valor II and felt tears streaming down her face. Admiral Clark is gone. All hands maintain defensive positions. The Krell, fleet leaderless and shocked, began to fragment. Individual captains gave conflicting orders, some calling for retreat, while others demanded vengeance. Their coordination collapsed into chaos, and then something unexpected happened. New contacts appeared on sensors, dozens of them, jumping into the system from multiple vectors. Identify those ships, Nicole ordered, her heart racing. They're council vessels, the tactical officer reported in disbelief. 50 ships from 12 different species. They're broadcasting allied status. The Galactic Council had finally acted, their fleet arriving exactly when humanity needed them most. The lead ship broadcast across all frequencies. Krell forces, this is the Council Defense Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw immediately. Any vessel that remains will be engaged. The Krell, already demoralized by the loss of their command ship, began a full retreat. Those that hesitated were met with coordinated fire from the Council fleet and humanity survivors. Within 20 minutes, the battle was over. The Krell armada fleeing in disorder, while human and Council ships secured the system. Nicole took reports from the surviving vessels, her voice mechanical as she processed the casualties. Of the 47 ships that had left Earth, only 3 remained operational. Over 40,000 human crew members had died, including Admiral Brandon Clark and everyone aboard the Defiance. But the Varani were saved on the planet's surface. Prime Minister Alora Venn addressed both her people and the galaxy. Today we witnessed the cost of courage. Humanity came when no one else would. They fought when victory seemed impossible. They died so that we might live. Her voice broke with emotion. 40 years ago, we saved human children because it was right.